Hi, I'm Justin Boyd.
I'm Brittany Pacheco,
I'm Franklin Cooper.
Tristan Jones.
and we are back, y'all. We are the Watchers in the Basement.
Welcome to the Watchers in the Basement. We are here today to discuss the third episode of the HBO series, The Last of Us. The episode titled Long, Long Time, named after a Linda Ronstadt song, which we'll get to in a little bit. Let's just start off. Overall thoughts on the episode. Brittany, what'd you think about this episode?
You know, I was anticipating another very action-packed, very, scary, seeing the broccoli face motherfuckers that I don't like seeing again. I was not expecting the episode that we got. And I know a lot of critics were hyping up the episode, saying it's the best in the whole season. And for me, that's hard to say right now, just because we don't have the rest of the season, of course. But for what it was, the story that it told, I really enjoyed it. I really enjoyed this episode, and it made me feel some type of way. But it was different for me to see Nick Offerman in this role, because I mean, the movies that I've seen him in are always like comedic type movies, and so to see like a very serious and very like loving type role was just different. But it was refreshing for me personally, so I enjoyed it. Frank, what did you think of this episode?
It's fucking beautiful, man. I don't know what to say. Like, it angered me. I was like, what is wrong with you people, man? Like, I don't want to see this beautiful gay love ballad sad shit. Like, first off, I had no idea gay love was so complicated. I maybe I'm ignorant. I mean, I've been heterosexual all my life, but I had no idea that it could be so complicated. That shit was so fucking sad. It was like the zombie version of The Notebook. I didn't know what to do with it. Like, it was very, very, very. I had a mix of emotions. I was so connected to Ron Swanson. And like, you know what's funny? When Ron Swanson, I mean, aka Nick Offerman, when he found the dude in the hall, I was like, they're gonna fuck. They're gonna bang. I just knew it, because he was like, he had been alone all this time. He's a survivalist. You know, I was like, they're gonna bang. And it was way more than that. He actually fell in love. I was so shocked by that, and was so sad. And it was a great episode. I ain't gonna lie. It was a great episode. It wasn't about the zombies. Like, it was to create such this episode, and the zombies are like in the background, like 40 yards away, and it centers around these two people. It was great writing. Yeah, so loved it.
Tristan, what do you think overall?
10 out of 10. One of the best. I'm trying not to get hyperbolic. It's absolutely one of the most riveting hours of television I've seen, at least in the last 5, 6, 7 years. As far as like bottle episodes, that just kind of bottle in this one storyline that goes away from the main story narrative.
Yep,
it's up there. It's amazing. Frank mentioned like he was shocked, or Brittany mentioned she was shocked. I was shocked too, but for totally different reasons. I too was expecting a lot of action, but because in this particular section in the game, this entire episode is different than how it is in the game.
Yeah, there's a lot of. We're going to get into that. We
can get into like the specifics of that. So that's where the shock came from me, and then they went completely left field, and it was just I didn't think anything about it was sad. I wasn't sad when this episode ended. I wasn't sad. I thought it was beautiful, and I thought that this episode was happy in a way that makes everything else sad in the show. Right? Like what this episode did was like show us the stakes, right? Like so much of The Last of Us and Walking Dead and Station 11, all these different shows and movies are about what people are trying to gain back, right? The world is post-apocalyptic world. And like this episode just took really great pains to show us what you live for, right? Like this is why it's so sad when the world ends, is because we lose this almost carefree human connection. But I love the episode. Again, I had read a few things saying like the same thing, Brittany, like this was the best episode of the season. 10 out of 10. I saw like the different ratings, and I was like, again, from my knowledge of the game, I was like, oh shit, we're about to see some shit. But no, they completely took my entire expectations and said, "Fuck that! You're gonna get this, and you're gonna love this instead." And I did.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think that those characters, Bill and Frank, the ones we're talking about, they got a happy ending, even though in this, this zombie half dead world or whatever, they got a happy. And I don't mean like that kind of happy, although that kind of happy ending also. It's all happy endings, right?
They got that
But
too.
right. But first I want to address like the critical stuff. So I also like Brittany and Tristan said, you read about the critics that love this show or this episode specifically. And I think the reason why is it's such a standout episode as opposed to like a lot of these critics have seen the full 9-episode run. We've obviously just seen the first 3 episodes. And I think this one just stands out. It's not, where it's not just Joel and Ellie walking from place to place or traveling or, having to find a way to survive. It was, like you said, Tristan, it was like a bottle episode. And I think that, and also you have really high quality talent in Nick Offerman and Murray Bartlett. And if you don't know who Murray Bartlett is, he was on the White Lotus season 1. He won the Emmy, by the way, for that role. He was phenomenal in that show.
Sure was.
I would for sure go back and watch if you haven't seen the White Lotus, watch both seasons, but certainly season 1 is pretty excellent with what he does. But like for my overall view of the episode, like just talking about Joel and Ellie, who weren't, they weren't hugely, crucial in this episode. They were kind of at the beginning and at the end. I thought this was the first time watching this show where I actually saw those characters and I didn't see the Game of Thrones actors. You know what I mean? Like I've gotten used to them now where they're just Joel and Ellie. It's not Pedro Pascal and Bella Ramsey. It's the characters from the video game. And something else like we talked about every week, the pacing of this show continues to be like just perfect. It's spot on. It's such a great way to tell this story that a lot of people like myself, I know some stuff, but I don't know everything like Tristan does. I think the way they're laying it out is so well done. And that continued obviously with this episode. And then this episode to me showed the true greatness of this show is that you can take a side story, which was not in the video game, right? And we're gonna talk about the differences here in a little bit. Like you take this side story that is like this unlikely love story, and it's just a side episode, and it could, like for most shows, it could be the main story. And these characters certainly could be a part of a crew with Joel and Ellie and like main characters in a show. And it's like they just had this like one episode, like almost like iso ball, like you give them the ball, get their way, let them play, and then now the season's going to continue on. I just thought like to do that with a show on the 3rd episode really shows how great this show is and what we can expect in the future.
And it took balls to do this.
Yeah.
Because again, the natural progression of where it was going,
right,
was following the game.
Right, exactly.
And I don't think most people would have complained if this narrative would have followed the game, at least almost like it is.
Right.
This episode, last thing I'll say about this episode justifies. I don't know if I've shown this. I know I've talked about it a little bit on this pod. And I know me and Frank have talked about it a little bit. I was hyper excited for this show, like hyper. When I heard it, when I played the game, I was like, hey, they need to make this a show.
Yeah.
And when I found out they were making the show, and then I saw the casting and stuff like that, I don't know it not since maybe season 6 of Game of Thrones have I been this excited for a show. And this episode justified it justified to me why I was so excited.
Yeah.
Why I had to be so excited, because I felt like they could flesh out some things from the game, and especially knowing it was going to be on HBO, this episode is like the watermark for like, this is why they did this show to me.
Yeah. Originally it was going to be a movie directed by Sam Raimi. So.
No shit.
Yeah.
I'm glad it wasn't.
No,
yeah.
It definitely works better as a series, like, I mean, if you did the Bill and Frank story, that'd be a great movie because that's kind of like what we watched on Sunday. But for the whole storyline of Joel and Ellie, I think that they made the right decision. But we're talking about Bill and Frank a lot. Let's talk about the differences in the game. or from the game to the show. And from all accounts, listening to the Game of Thrones, not Game of Thrones, so sorry, Game of Thrones, the Last of Us companion pod that they put out there, the showrunners said that like this is the biggest departure from the game, is the fact that in the game Bill doesn't die. Is that correct, Tristan?
Bill does not die. No,
doesn't die. Right. Now Frank is understood to be, or is identified as Bill's partner. Although I don't know that do they make it clear that it's like a sexual partner, or it could just be like a, buddy, or he was on the police force with me, or whatever.
Hinted,
yeah,
it's hinted that.
Right.
I mean, it's very much implied that
Right.
that Bill and Frank are romantic partners. We don't see Frank in the game. By the time Joel and Ellie get to Bill, and we can also talk about the path they took to get to Bill. By the time they get to Bill, Frank is already dead. He's left a suicide. He's left a suicide note. Bill and Frank are completely at odds. Frank, at the end of his suicide note, tells Bill how much he hates him because Bill is so stuck in his ways. He wants to kind of just fortify himself in this little mini utopia that he's built the last 20 years. And Frank actually tries to escape. He goes to try to get a battery to put into a car so he can leave and go somewhere else, ends up getting bitten. And instead of like allowing himself to turn, he hangs himself. And he leaves that in the note for Bill. Well, actually, Ellie, Ellie or Joel Joel finds the note. And he reads it. You read it as the gamer. And he just kind of, he goes to Bill. He's like, hey, I'm sorry about Frank and everything. You could tell that there was clearly like this years long friendship. And Bill just kind of plays it off. He's like, well, he was holding me back. And when you have somebody you love, like it anchors you, like you can't really go anywhere. Like it becomes just another person that is relying on you. And Bill is kind of playing this, but you can also tell through his voice how hurt he is about him and Frank in the fallout. Just real quick, another departure is Joel and Ellie have to go through some shit to get to Bill's house. Like Bill, as we can tell from the show, he has all these booby traps around his property.
Right.
And Joel actually gets caught up in one of those booby traps as they sneak into what's called Bill's town. And Ellie is trying to cut him down, and we get a bunch of clickers, a bunch of runners after him. And as the gamer, as the player, you have to shoot these you have to shoot these clickers and runners while Ellie is trying to cut you down, but you're upside down. So it's one of my favorite parts of the game, actually. Like, you have to shoot these guys upside down. Eventually Bill comes, saves them, and then they come in, and Bill actually leaves with them for a little while before he heads back to his house.
But one of Bill's, like, his main role in the game is he provides resources to the players, right? That's pretty much his purpose. Okay.
That's where they get like the bow and arrow. You get a few more guns, a bunch of ammo, some other stuff.
Right.
Yeah.
So Brittany, I was going to ask you about this because I know we talked about this off air, but so Neil Druckmann, the person who wrote this game, he created the game, he's working on the show. He had a great quote talking about, departing from the game and the differences. He said, if it's the same or worse, we stick with the game. If it's better, we deviate. And I think that this deviation was the right move. What do you think about that, Brittany?
Absolutely. I mean, I've talked about this with various other television shows or movies that are based on like books and that kind of thing. If you have to broaden, let me backtrack. In order to explain this character, Bill, right? Because Tristan just said that with Bill, you knew that he was in a relationship with Frank. You didn't get a whole heck of a lot outside of just what you get in the game, but to go into this show and delve into this character and really make him human, right? He was a survivalist. He was ready for, the apocalypse, basically. And he was not going to go quietly, basically. He was just going to mind his business, hide in his bunker, stay prepared. And once the town was completely evacuated, he went to work. He was stocking up on supplies and what have you. But, you know, to develop this character, to understand his way of thinking and to understand who he is, and then to see someone completely unexpected come into his life and just kind of soften him. And there was a great quote that Bill says to Frank upon Frank's death was, I didn't know fear, or I didn't have any fear until I met you. And to think about that in this apocalyptic sort of way of living, to find love in the most unexpected places and build a life with someone for, you know, what, 16, not quite 20 years. They were together for quite a long while before they decided to end it. It's really, it's sad, but it's beautiful at the same time, you know, because we talked about in a previous pod about why are people still having kids, right? You know, why are people still bringing children into this world when there's clickers and Tristan said runners that are out in this world? Like, why would you want to bring new life into it? But then instead of living in solidarity and just living, like, what is life without living for something or someone else, right? And so I think it was just a great deviation from the game storyline, because you really got to understand this character and see just what a life they had, you know, the ups and downs. And for Bill to, like, you could clearly tell he didn't like Joel, but then for him to leave everything to Joel and say,
respect. He says, I don't like you.
Yeah, exactly. Like, it's, I mean, he just straight up, like, he just doesn't like him. But then to, in the end, leave the suicide note and says, you know, I give you everything. I give you everything, and take care of Tess, which obviously we know Tess is no longer with Joel. But I mean, I really felt that I got to know Bill. I really felt I got to know Bill and Frank. And I just thought, this is a fucking amazing love story in an apocalyptic era.
Yeah, I mean, it really is like an opposites attract kind of deal. I mean, Frank is a people person. He wants to make friends. He wants to, you know, he wants to like beautify the community that they have. And Bill is a, you know, he's a conservative. He's a survivalist. He's a loner, and he's just about, you know, protecting things with, you know, with guns or whatever. And it's really like it's kind of it's like a middle-aged love story. Like, it's a middle-aged couple. They just happen to be these two gay characters in this video game, which you know, this world that's created in a video game. I thought it was really well done.
Let me comment on that really quick. And it's just something I'm not sure if anyone else really picked up on. I'm sure you did, because we're all intelligent people here. But the fact that in the time that this pandemic was happening in 2003, gay marriage was not something that was, you know, sanctified, if you will, or legal, if you will, not everywhere. So to consider at the very end of their lives that Frank asked Bill, like, we're going to get married, you know, we're going to do this is just crazy to me. Like, that's what they wanted. And, you know, signs of the times obviously wouldn't allow for that. But like, I don't know. I think it was kind of cool how they were able to kind of bring in modern day stuff into this game.
It's
like,
legitimacy for their identity, their lives.
Yeah.
Right? Like at the end of their lives, literally, like they still needed that legitimacy. And that just tells you how deep the trauma of like not being able to participate in these just everyday human things can take a toll. Like Bill, you can tell, like when he's sitting at that piano and he's, you know, playing, I know we'll get to that later, but like you could feel the weight of like, man, I've been hiding for so long. And so to the point where I've been so comfortable in the hiding, and now there's nobody to hide from. Like there's literally no one to hide from. And from there, like there's, you feel like a literal weight being lifted off, because you could finally be who he knew he was and just had to repress for so long. And I think that's also interesting. Like at the end of their lives, they still like, hey, let's get married. All the marriage advocates out there just like rejoicing. See?
Yeah, I mean that was like that's Frank's dying wishes. He wanted like one great, one good, or one wonderful last day, and that's obviously getting married was a part of that. Um, Frank, what did you think about the way they used like time jumps to tell the story of the Bill and Frank relationship?
You know what's funny? I hated the time jumps in House of the Dragon, but I appreciate the time jumps in Bill and Frank's story because it illuminated their expedited connection and the sense of needing each other over the years. I think there was a scene where after they make love or whatever, and they're about to eat, he's like, I'll be here for a couple of days and I'll leave. And then in the very next scene, it says 3 years later.
Right.
And I had to pause it because for me, I had to sit there and like try to like visualize in my head, like, man, how fast is this love story, this origin that came from this guy finding this guy on the ground and booby trap to like now 3 years later, they're happy and content in this isolated community. And they just seem so unbothered. And as long as they have each other, that time jump really signified how quickly things came together for them. And I appreciated that. And to be honest, I thought one of them was going to die within that time jump. And then you go to, I think, 07 and 10 and 2023. I'm like, fuck, this is crazy. I don't like in this insane world of like raiders and zombies and destruction and just this dystopian, they found some type of like normalcy within their connection. I thought it was beautiful.
Yeah. In one of the time jumps, I think one of the years, I think it was 2013, we see they have that lunch with Joel and Tess. And that's like their first meeting with Joel and Tess. Is that correct, Tristan? Is that what you got out of that?
That is. You could tell that because Frank mentions the radio, and of course we got that from episode 1 about how people communicate throughout these throughout the radio. So yeah, that's the first time. Like apparently, again, this isn't explained fully in the game, so like everything we're getting is from this episode for the most part.
Right.
But you can tell like there's been some communication, or somebody's put them in touch with Joel and Frank. Like this, I don't think this is a happenstance like meeting up. So
right.
Yeah.
So from what I can tell from the episode, so after that appears to be their only interaction with Joel and Tess, at least in person, right? So do you think that there were other times where they got together, or?
I absolutely think there were other times they got together. Because if you go back to the conversation that Joel had with Bill as he and Tess are leaving,
right?
And this is where I think the big respect between Joel and Bill lies, is that Bill recognizes Joel and Joel recognizes Bill. They're both survivalists. They're both protectors.
Right.
They both have a keen sense to recognize imminent danger. So when Joel tells Bill, like, hey, that fence, you got a year left in the fence. I can get you these spools that last you forever. You can tell like there's a constant rapport between them. And also, and Joel and Ellie are going through the gas station. Joel says, like, Tess and I, we keep things in these particular safe houses or stash spots when we go on these routes. So that the show is letting us know that this is something, and then this is something that happens frequently. And then Joel and Tess are smugglers. Like, so like this requires over the course of 17 to 20 years, whatever.
Right.
This requires them to make frequent trips outside of the QZ to, trade things and so on and so forth. So yeah, I'm pretty sure that they had a pretty frequent rapport.
To add to that, I think it might have been a 2-year gap because when Joe's looking for the supplies, Ellie asked, "Did you forget?" He's like, "I'm zeroing in. It's been a couple of years." So that led me to, like, when I think about it and go back to the episode, I think that they probably saw each other 2 years prior, passing that little bunkhouse where they hid those supplies, and probably saw Bill and Frank then too.
That would make a lot of sense because I felt like the respect thing between Bill and I'm sorry, Joel. Whenever we see, I think it's like later in 2013, whenever those raiders show up and Bill gets shot, he, the one thing he tells Frank is, call Joel. He can protect you. Call him. He'll know what to do. So it seems like they had to have more than just one interaction over the years. But this kind of leads me to my follow-up question, which is, episode 2 ended with we see Tess's death in 2023, but then we see her in this episode, which I was surprised that we saw the flashback. We see her. Do y'all think we'll see a flashback with Bill and Frank again, or was that a one-off episode? And I'll go to Brittany first. What do you think we'll see those characters again?
As much as I would love to see Bill and Frank again, I really do feel that this episode 3 was just a one-off episode. I'd be genuinely surprised if we did see these characters pop up again, like as a flashback. I really don't. I really don't. It's kind of sad to think that you have these amazing actors to portray these characters and they're only there for one episode, but I don't see the necessity to bring them back, because it's kind of like I got the understanding of Bill's purpose was to ultimately supply Joel with the truck and the supplies and all this other thing. There's really no need to keep going back and forth. I understand with Tess, because think about it. Joel and Tess were together for like some 16 years or so, right? And they have a lot of history and they were doing whatever that they were doing. So but ultimately, no, I don't think we'll see Bill and Frank again. And real quick, y'all, I do want to give a shout out to those who are in our live chat. Nick, all the way from the UK, says evening, guys. And also Trisha, aka the Texas Potterhead. She said she really loved this episode and story. And then, of course, Marcella, our fellow watcher, who is also watching The Last of Us and really enjoyed this episode.
I got her.
You did. You did.
It's holding out on me. Better love this mushroom shit.
Oh my god.
Yeah, I think only like about 18 million people a week are watching this show. So it's a small cult classic. Yeah. By the way,
niche genre.
Right. After just 2 episodes, it was renewed for season 2, which none of us were surprised, but
Shocker.
So so Tristan, back to that question. Do you think we're gonna see Bill and Frank again in a flashback, or you think we're moving on?
At best, we could possibly see them, but it would be in service of another flashback. Like maybe we're looking at Joel and Tess and them passing by. It would be something bit, but like Brittany, I think there's a closer to 0% chance that we see Bill and Frank again, especially because they're dead. They're dead. Like if Bill was still alive, then I could possibly see it, but nah, I don't think so. Not with 9 episodes. I doubt it.
Yeah. Frank, what are your thoughts? You think we'll see him again?
I don't think so. Only because I think if you do, you devalue the ending of their character arc in this episode by bringing them back again. So, it was so poetic how they died, and it was almost Shakespearean. So to only come back to bring more flashbacks of them, it wouldn't make sense to me.
Well said, Frank. Well said.
Yeah. What did y'all think about the way they aged? Didn't it seem like they aged pretty severely that last 10 years? And granted, you're in an apocalyptic world. It's not, there's probably not great skincare routines or whatever, but it seemed like they went from 2013 to 2023 was a hard road for those guys. Brittany, what do you think about that? Did you think it looked like, did they think they looked too old?
It's hard to say because we don't have a definitive age of when these two met. I mean, we do hear from Bill that he says he's apologizing to Frank for being older than him. He can't keep up when they're, exercising or whatever. Yeah. So we don't really have he's Bill's 50 and Frank's 45 or something like that. But no, I wasn't too jarred with how quickly they aged, just because if there were illnesses that were happening in, the 15-year span of time that they are together, and you don't have the medicines and you don't have the things that you need in order to keep yourself healthy. I mean, yeah, it's going to wear and tear on the body for sure. And then to me, they didn't clearly state it, but it seemed that Frank had either a form of multiple sclerosis or ALS. It's hard to know for sure. And that's a very degenerative sort of disease where, you can't walk, you can't, function properly. And so, yeah, there's a lot that was going on. So I'd imagine the illness, especially with Frank, it was a big toll on Bill as well. mentally, physically, emotionally, that kind of thing.
The showrunners said that they didn't want to specify the illness in the show, but then when they were asked, well, what do you think it was? They did exactly what you said, Brittany. They said it was either MS or early ALS. So you nailed that on the head.
That's what
Congrats.
I do.
Yeah. You know.
I know all things. It's kind of like with what's his name, King Viserys and House of the Dragon. He had like some form of leprosy or something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Frank, what did you think about the comedy in this episode? I thought there was some pretty funny line. There was the Arby's comment about, free food or whatever. There was I thought the piano joke was great. He was like, "Oh, you have this like whatever piano, like what's it worth?" And he's like, "Well, nothing right now. There's no other people alive to spend money, So, but what did you think? Because I thought it was actually it was sad, beautiful, but it was also kind of funny. I thought,
I think Nick Offerman's defensive mechanism is to be funny. Like I imagine
that's like his default as an actor.
Yeah, that's his default. Yeah. Like I don't think there's no script in any genre that you're not going to get a little bit of a semblance of comedy from him. I picture Aziz Ansari talking to Ron Swanson in this episode. That was a typical Ron Swanson response, and Ron Swanson is a character that Nick Offerman played in Parks and Rec for like 10 seasons, but. It was brilliant, man. The Arby's comment had me laughing. I think I rewound like 3 times. Like it was simply hilarious. To see Nick in this, and Nick has played very stoic and like weird, obscene characters before, and a lot of other TV shows. There's a Hulu show that I watched a few years ago, and it's a similar character like that as well. The guy just has serious range, man. I'm almost another reason I was so sad too, because I thought Bill could have been a great asset to the cast for a little bit of a longer run. So to see him pass or die, commit suicide was kind of sad, man, because he's such a great acting talent.
And I really thought he was going to be a bigger part of the show, because I remember whenever the cast was announced, I was like, "Oh, Nick Offerman's in the show." I thought he was going to play like a bigger. I mean, he had a big role. Don't get me wrong; it was a huge they're probably going to win awards for that episode. Let's be real, but I thought it was going to be a multiple episode kind of run for him. So
I have a question, man. Like, how many stores did he raid, man, to have that much wine over a 20-year span? Like, bro, he had a couture. I think it said 81 or 82 on one of the bottles I saw. I'm like, bro, like, where are you getting? Was there like a winery not far from your community? Like, how do you?
Yeah, there was.
There was. Okay.
That was one of the last places he went to the day that everyone evacuated. He went to Home Depot. He went to, all these the gas power plant, whatever. Yeah. Okay. And he dropped that down. He was ready. And Frank, you and I know, because wine doesn't go bad.
But that wine would be, I'm saying for me, I'm a winer, that wine would have been gone within like 5 years. It's not going to last 20 years.
But again, he's a survivalist. And what do survivalists learn how to do? Which is like ration things.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So,
and I'm pretty sure like
if he's a wine drinker like that, I'm pretty sure like either him or his late mother had some bottles and, just kind of add to. So I don't think he just picked up wine on September 26th, 2003.
Today's the day I'm gonna start drinking.
Right. No, because he rated the gas, he rated the gas and had like 2 or 3 barrels of gas. I'm thinking that he went to the wine spot and like got a truck full of wine and just brought it back to the crib. But I mean, that makes sense. His mother seemed very astute and very bougie, so she probably had a wine cellar downstairs too. So
he was well prepared, right?
Very he had rabbit and the steak that he ate in the beginning. I'm like, bro, this is Ron Swanson again, dog. This is a steak and pork. This is what Ron does, bro. Like this, it was just funny to me, man.
Yeah.
So Brittany, as Frank was talking about, the character build in the show had a lot of resources that he, I think you wanted to talk about some of those resources. It seemed like they were never ending.
I mean, considering from the moment that we first were introduced to Bill to the moment that he and Frank committed suicide together, I have questions about said resources, because continuity for me is in anything, it has to make sense. But when you don't have people who are working at these power plants, and how is gas still being like something that he can get his hands on? How is the water still running? I get like, having the electricity because you have a generator in your backyard, but it has to be gas powered. But like, how do you have endless amounts of resources when there's no one in this town anymore? I mean, I get being prepared, but damn. I don't know. It's nothing that makes or breaks the show for me. It's just little things here and there that I noticed. I'm like, how do you still have running water? Like,
there's no fucking way you have a generator last 20 fucking years.
Exactly.
There's no way. There's no way, bro. Like, without being able to get gas to like refill it every so
exactly. Often. I mean, it's a massive, generator or whatever, but like, there's just no way. I mean, the chickens, even like, you have chickens, okay, they'll multiply, but then avian flu, what's happening right now, will happen. They'll die. They'll stop producing the eggs, and just the seeds. And I guess because the fact that you introduce Joel and Tess, and they're gonna barter, and we can get you supplies. This is that. Maybe that's how he was able to get some of these things. But like the water thing, especially when Joel and Ellie show up at the house and Ellie's all excited, they have hot water, I'm gonna go take a shower. It's like, how? Anyway, yeah.
I think
Marcella wondered the same thing.
I can't fully explain those things, but like, I think what the show is trying to kind of teach us, and you be the judge whether they succeeded in this or not, is that Bill has been preparing for this for a long time, like way before the pandemic. Like, this is something he's like, why do you have a secret basement before? You know what I'm saying? Like, this is not something he just cultivated out the blue. Like, this is something I think it's something he's been preparing for. Yeah. Now, again, how successful they pulled that off, I guess you be the judge, but they want us to know that Bill this is what he does. Like, he plans for those things ahead of time. So,
yeah, I mean, he was a doomsday prepper, but he was like, instead of being that, he could have been Batman. Like, he's more prepared than Batman is. He's ready for every scenario. And I'm surprised he didn't have like a Batmobile or something else to show off.
The mask that he had on to begin with, he could have just looked at the camera and been like, I'm Batman.
Yeah, I thought that was a really cool like way to start the story of him, where like his town is being evacuated, abandoned, and he's the last one left. And then honestly, like, it seems like nothing makes him happier than to be alone, what he's been preparing for until Frank comes into his life. So let's talk about the suicide letter. And Tristan, I want you to talk about it because I know, like you mentioned in the game, it's different. But what did you think about this letter that Ellie finds, and she reads part of it, she gives to Joel, and that and also just like how their bodies, they left their bodies, they left the window open, you get that shot of the sunlight, like that's part of like what I thought was the beautiful stuff of this episode. Tell us about the suicide letter, just the end of these two characters.
Well, I'll start at the end with the window. Yeah. The showrunners mentioned this on the companion podcast, but I mean, if you play the game, the window is what you see when you start the game. Like, before you hit press play, and they said they wanted to do, like, instead of skip intro, they wanted to do play game or start playing, whatever the hell.
Yeah.
Or play now.
Right.
So like, that window is iconic. Like, anytime you see, like, they said they wanted to start each episode with like a different cold open with a window. So it's really iconic to game players. But the suicide note, it's the central thesis of the show, right? Like, this is about this whole episode is about purpose, right? Bill's purpose at first was to survive. He reveled in that. He like actually wanted that. He couldn't wait for a pandemic, and he couldn't wait for the world to shut down, because that's when he knew he was going to thrive. And Frank came, and his whole purpose changed. Then it became about finding yourself, finding your identity. Then it became about loving this person. Then it became about like the different compromises that you make within relationships. Then it became like, hey, this is somebody I'm going to spend the rest of my life with, like, in this two-person community that we built. And Ellie's reading this, and it's God, this, like, this show and the writers are so amazing because they had Ellie read this to Joel. So Joel, I guess, could fully process what he's hearing without like the added bonus of having to read at the same time. He's processing Bill not talking really about Joel and Tess. He's talking about Joel and Ellie. And he's like, it's the perfect parallel because Joel didn't necessarily have to protect Tess. Tess, not in the game, not on the show, does not need much of protecting, right? Like, yeah, you get into it with a clicker. Yeah, okay, I need to step in and do that. But just in general in this world, Tess is kind of the boss, right? And Joel is the muscle for the most part. So in a sense, Bill doesn't even know it. He's not writing to Joel to motivate him to protect Tess. He's writing for him to motivate. He's writing to motivate him to protect the next person who needs protection. And and Ellie is reading this, and Joel is just looking at her. She is the one that he was put here to protect. Like, and that's why he needs to take these resources. She's the one. So again, that's the central thesis of this show, which is protection and protecting the ones you love and making sure like that we make it to this destination. And making sure that we can like actually live in love instead of just surviving, right? In spite of love. So
Tristan, was that more of like, I guess, Bill saying like, look, I am a testament of a guy who was hopeless, a guy who was a cynic, and me experiencing what I experienced and finding my purpose. I know you can find yours because I did it, so I know you can do it.
It's 1-to-1. Gotcha. Bill is, like I said, Bill is Joel, Joel is Bill. Like. Gotcha. To varying extremes, but that's the central thesis of the entire show, of the entire game. It's like, hey, you didn't think that this person was coming. You weren't looking for love. You completely shut yourself off from love because of past experiences. No, here's a new purpose for you now. Like, take this purpose, embrace that purpose, and go be the person that you've been, but be that person for this new person. Right. And it's 1-to-1. Perfect.
Ladies and gentlemen, Tristan said in promoting this pod that he was going to be poetic. Boom. There it was, y'all. There it was.
I mean, it's easy to be like, it's right there. Like, it's such a beautiful thing. And again, in the game, Joel reads this note. Right. And you feel it the same. You kind of feel it when Joel is reading a note in the game. Like, yeah, like Frank is warning Bill about how can I say this? Okay. Frank is bitching at Bill because Bill did not want to step outside of his comfort zone and live life. Right? He just wanted to survive. Right. So as Joel is reading this note in the game, I think he can feel what Frank is saying as if Frank is talking to him. And from that point on in the game, and I think from this point on in the show, we see a different Joel, right? A purposeful Joel, a Joel that's starting to open himself up to, if not at first love, it's just like
trust
and purpose, right? His purpose no longer is about surviving. It's about living. It's about living for himself and living for Ellie so that Ellie can live.
So Tristan, real quick. So that letter, that suicide letter that Frank wrote.
That was a bar. Hold on.
That was a bar.
Let it breathe. Let it breathe. Yeah.
That was a bar. So just to clarify, because I didn't play the video game. So in the video game, the suicide note, Frank addressed it to Joel, or was it to? It was to Bill.
Joel finds it as so. Ellie and once they come into the house, Ellie and Bill actually like are at odds because Ellie's like, hey, you owe Joel this favor. You need to repay this favor. We need a battery. We need a car, blah, blah, blah. So as you do in the game, every time you walk into any space, you walk around and start rummaging for stuff, finding supplies, little, batteries or screwdrivers or bottles or whatever. And Joel finds the note in the kitchen. And as they're about to leave, he walks over to Bill and is like, hey, I'm sorry. And that's when Bill kind of plays the tough role of, he was dragging me down anyway. It's like, can tell he's clearly hurt. Because when he mentions like it's a partner, he's like, yeah, he was He was a partner. Like you could tell, like he's keeping something within. So yeah.
Gotcha. Let that bitch breathe.
Man.
So in the show, Bill and Frank bond over a Linda Ronstadt song, and of course, as I'm learning, as Tristan knows, and I think a lot of people know, the music is the importance of music in the Last of Us is it's a big theme throughout the whole season, the whole series,
and the game,
game. Yeah. So first question for y'all before this episode, had y'all heard of Linda Ronstadt?
I have not.
Brittany,
I am a white music connoisseur, my boy.
I'm older than y'all, so I definitely heard of her because she was like the queen of the 70s and early 80s. Like she was very famous. She dated George Lucas for a while. So yeah, go ahead.
That's news to me. No, what I was going to say, I'm the youngest in this group, but it's one of those things, and Justin knows this, is that I know movies better and actors better than like musicians and bands and things like that. So like hearing the song, I've heard the song before, but to put a person's name to it, I couldn't have done that. So yes and no.
Yeah. No,
I know about Linda Ronstadt. I watched the CNN documentary about her.
I've seen it too.
Years ago.
Yeah.
So I know some songs when I hear, oh, that's Linda Ronstadt, but like you can't just say, hey, Linda Ronstadt, what are your favorite 5 songs? I'll be like, oh,
right.
Shit. Like I gotta hear something.
Yeah. There's definitely songs that we all know that are her songs that you probably don't know that are her songs that are her songs.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But
Marcella's confessing that she used to pretend to be her when she was little. That's adorable.
I'm telling you, like in the 70s, she was like Beyonce. She was that kind of like famous because and also she did a lot of different genres of music. You know, she was like country, like rock, folk music, like all these things. She, later on, she did like a famous duet with Aaron Neville, which is, I think a lot of people know that song. And
it's her and Carole King, like just amazing songwriters.
Now I know Carole King, definitely know Carole King.
Carole King is like one of the GOAT songwriters.
Legend.
Wait, the Aaron Neville, Mr. Mole Man, Aaron Neville.
Yeah.
Oh shit! I gotta find out. I love Aaron Neville.
I can't think of the name of the song, but like it's one of those like famous duet songs that trust me, if you Google them, you'll find them. But speaking of that, so Linda Ronstadt, her music on Spotify as of Sunday night, her streams were up 5,000%. That's insane. Like it's like 4,900, but I'm rounding, whatever. Like, I mean, not that she
happened with damn, whose song did they use in fucking Stranger Things?
Oh yeah, is it Kate Bush or something?
Yeah,
Bush. It was
right. Which
and Metallica, in case people have never heard of them before. Just saying.
As if they need more streams,
yeah.
Hey, that's the best concert I've ever been to, hands down. Best concert I've ever been to.
I've never been a heavy metal. Never been heavy metal.
We're gonna have to educate you a little bit more. But anyway,
no, I was just gonna say the song they chose, which is the title of the episode, "Long Time." Like if you listen to the words, it's like such a perfect song for those two characters to kind of find each other too. It's
about this long-term unrequited love.
Right.
I love this. I know this isn't coming to me, but I'm just gonna fucking love it anyway.
Yeah. So whoever chose the music, which I think it was one of the showrunners,
Craig
Mason. Yeah, that was what an awesome job he did. I mean, all across the board. But I think it's really cool when they like bring something back that was like super culturally like significant, like 30, 40 years ago. They bring it to now, and it's like a lot of us are discovering for the first time. And it's like, wow, this is really, really good music. But I don't know. I think that's also just a sign of how like great this show is that they can do that. And like you said with like Stranger Things, it's only like these like super like amazing shows that can pull that off. It's the Disney Plus shows aren't exactly doing that. No shade there. A little bit of shade there, I guess, but
a lot of it.
So something that we learned in the early parts of this episode, which I didn't know, but makes a lot of sense, is that contaminated food played a huge role in the outbreak. Cereal, cake, or pancake.
Can I say?
Go ahead, tell me.
Can I say? while watching this episode, I like to snack. Okay, I'm a snacker. Like I like to snack over like actual like meals.
Yeah.
I was snacking on cereal when Joel was explaining how this pandemic may have spread, and I'm like, and I'm looking at my Cheerios, and I'm like, well, shit. I'm like, well, you know, here's to life, and you know, let's see if I turn into a clicker, you know, by tomorrow. So
it made me wonder as well, like if this was done on purpose to like create population control and it just got out of hand.
I'm gonna say,
oh my.
I'll say this. I'll say that that being the cause is foreshadowed pretty heavily in the first 2 episodes. I know it wasn't on last week, but go back to the first episode. Yeah. Who's the first person we see get infected? Nana. Yep. What was she being fed to by her son? Like basically bread, right?
You said Nana was the first person to be infected. Sorry,
well, she was the first one we see.
Yeah.
Right. Also, Nana. Sarah and Mrs. I forgot the names. My bad.
Adler, I think.
Yeah. What are they doing? They're making cookies.
Yep.
Right. Sarah does not eat the cookie. Like that's one thing. We see it in episode 2 with the mycologist. And where do they talk about the first infections really happening? Is at that bread plant. It's a flower plant, right? So this is heavily foreshadowed in the first 2 episodes. So
if this is, you know, like Frank suggested, population control, let me tell you one thing: gluten-free, people. Go gluten-free. It is a great way to avoid
marriage advocates and gluten-free people. Love episode 3.
Jesus, I mean, talk about learning to curb your eating habits to avoid all of this. But hey, listen, I'm still of the opinion. I was having this conversation with someone on Instagram the other day. The world's going to return to its natural state one way or another. And if it's by fungi or some other sort of, you know, pandemic, like it's going to happen. If it happens during our lifetime, that's going to fucking suck. I just hope it happens after our lifetime. Just saying.
Yeah, there's been scientists have said there's been over a dozen cataclysmic disasters that's cleansed the earth since the dawn of time. So it's coming. It's coming.
Not till after chapter 1 of DC. I need to see how it plays. I need Superman Legacy. I need to see how this plays out.
What a great plug-in, Justin. We
did. I need Steph Curry to win his 5th ring. After that, I don't really give a fuck what happens. We can
real shit. After February 12th, I ain't tripping, dog. I just need Mahomes to get that second Super Bowl, and I'm Gucci. So we can end this Burrow Allen bullshit talk, and I'm good, dog.
I don't have anything that I need to see or do like before the world ends. So I just need my dog with me. Like, and I need her in my arms. Like, just have my dog with me.
So do y'all have any other final thoughts or observations on the episode you want to touch on?
I do. Like, I was very discouraged with the first episode because it was so slow. Like, this is why I left Walking Dead. Walking Dead was brilliant for like 4 seasons, and then they took this cookie cutter template of like, you know what we're gonna do? We're gonna get away from the zombies and get away from figuring out what's caused this pandemic, and just create villains every fucking season, and then find a way to beat the villain at the end of the season and bring in a whole new villain for the following season. And it got so mundane and so predictable. And with this show, it's purely about survival and adapting to this new reality and trying to find some normalcy in this fucked up world. And it's not cookie cutter, at least not to me. And to be able to implement this grandiose storyline with these complex characters, and I'm not sure if they're as complex in the video game, but these are complex characters. Yeah, and so to be able to implement that for a movie, for a show is very difficult because you have to create these personalities pretty much from scratch that you didn't have in the video game. So I'm very impressed with these last couple episodes, man. I can't wait to see where they take it, man. This is home box office, dog. They always find ways to to create smashes. So I'm happy. I'm very very pleased.
Yep.
For me, my biggest, besides obviously the Bill and Frank narrative, like going back to Joel and Ellie, you see complete opposites of their relationship at the beginning of this episode and at the end. And I thought it was brilliant for the show to come back to Joel and Ellie, for them to find Bill and Frank, or go find them at their house and find out like their fate. Because at the beginning of this, we see, I mean, we didn't really talk much about it because again, we spent so much time on Bill and Frank, but like there's still that animosity between both of them over what happened with Tess.
Right.
And, you know, Ellie, who clearly is guilty about what happened to Tess, is telling Joel that she should not feel any guilt about what happened to Tess. She should not be blamed for what happened to Tess. So you start to see like bits and pieces of that wall between them falling down. Joel, he starts eating a little piece and throws the rest to Ellie. Joel tries to shield Ellie from seeing. I'm surprised we didn't talk about this, but like the dead skeletons of people, you know, the skeletons of people who had got killed, even though they weren't sick. So he's trying to shield her from the realities of the world. And for me, the biggest thing, I guess, going forward is seeing on, at least through this medium, how Joel slowly begins to trust Ellie, that she's just not this little girl who's going to hold him back, but like she's an ally. And you know, how they become family, I think is going to be like the beauty of the show. Here's a big difference between Last of Us and The Walking Dead, because there's so many elements that are similar, right? Walking Dead also was about survival and finding normalcy in this fucked up world. It's not HBO, so the character development was never as great. But with the Last of Us, we know there's an end game. At least I know that there's an end game, or at least there's a perception of an end game. So like we know that there's something that we're trying to get to, right? We know we're trying to get Ellie somewhere so this thing can happen. Whereas The Walking Dead, the reason why I jumped off The Walking Dead, because it just seemed like this continuous cycle of, first of all, I don't know if they told us in later seasons. I stopped after the Negan shit.
Yeah.
I don't know if they ever tell us like how the shit started. I don't know if they take any pains to like explain how this infection started in these things. Like, I just don't know. And I got tired of waiting for it. This show has let us know in episodes 1, 2, and 3 in so many different ways how this started, and they gave us the end game. This is why The Last of Us is going to be one of them ones. And I said it. Damn it, you will give me my credit.
And it's well thought out. Like, it's like, in reality, to be able to find a cure or find normalcy, you need to know the origin of things. That's how you circle back to find closure. And in Walking Dead, and again, like you, I jumped off when Negan showed up. There was no, they veered off the path of like trying to find this cure, and then just recycle characters every 4 or 5 episodes, just killing off people. So there was no sense of connection to these characters, to where now I know Joel and Ellie, because they've been publicized and advertised for months now prior to the show coming on, that they're going to be pivotal characters all throughout, you know. So it gives me stability, and knowing that I can bond with these characters and root for these characters, or hate these characters, but knowing that they're going to be here for the long term. It gives me some type of stability that I didn't get with Walking Dead.
So, sorry, what I was going to say, kind of piggybacking off of Tristan talking about more of Ellie and Joel's journey to get to Bill's, is seeing the world through Ellie's eyes. You know, she's orphaned, she's grown up in like a Fedra type school or what have you. So, I mean, she's smart, she knows things, but at the same time, she doesn't know life the way that Joel remembers life, right? And so for her to see this completely demolished airplane, right, and then all these dead bodies and what have you, and to learn just how things just ended one day in 2003, almost, you know, simultaneously, I guess you could say. And for her to go into this gas station while Joel's kind of picking through, trying to find where he left his stash, you know, she goes on her own way to find whatever she can find, and comes across this clicker that's been, you know, buried more or less. It's still alive somehow. And, you know, Ellie goes back and forth with Joel about wanting to have a gun, right, to protect herself, protect them. She's handy with this knife that she's got, and she uses that knife to kind of slice open a little bit of the clicker, and then she stabs it, kills it, what have you. So she's kind of like, we're being shown that she's someone who can hold her own, if you will. Maybe not to the same degree as Joel just yet, but she's got some balls, right? She's got some balls
and a sadistic streak.
Maybe so. I'd imagine that Lyanna Mormont would have as well had we developed her a little bit more. But you know, love Game of Thrones. Miss her, seeing her in Game of Thrones. But anyway, just seeing the world through Ellie's eyes and seeing her excitement, of course, with the hot water. She was going to take a shower. She told Joel he needed to as well. They, you know, pack up on the supplies, and she's never been in a car before. She's never. Right. Like, to me, I would have loved to have seen her like, hey, roll down that window. I want to see if you know how to roll down that window. You know, like this generation who's just used to flipping like that little, I don't know, power switch or whatever, and not rolling it up like how we did growing up, right? To me, it's kind of refreshing because it's like, you know, you've experienced life, and now you're seeing it through the eyes of someone who hasn't. And so when Joel simply tells her seatbelt, she's like, huh? Like, what are you talking about? I don't know. It's really cute. It's weird to say that, but it's really cute to see just how much of a noob she is. She doesn't know anything, right? She hasn't experienced life, and for her just to walk through the woods and just kind of take it all in, because we're on the same journey with her as well to discover what life is like post pandemic, or pandemic, whatever. You get what I'm trying to say. To me, that was really great. But I wanted to ask in general, because John gets major anxiety when he watches any scene that deals with Ellie by herself in a dark room. Do y'all does she bring up any anxiety levels for y'all because she's doing stuff that maybe she shouldn't be doing?
It doesn't for me, because I know she's going to be around for a long time. So I know she's going to find a way to get out of whatever situation. Now, whether or not people who die because of her decisions, I'm sure that would happen. But as far as her, I'm not worried about her safety at all.
I think you kind of get the feeling that whenever she's in a scene like that, you feel like there's a jump scare coming, you know, like that. You just kind of prepare yourself for that kind of stuff. But otherwise, no, I think obviously she's one of the main characters, so I feel like she'll be in it for the long haul.
I've spent a lot of time with Miss Ellie, a lot of time, a lot of hours. Yeah. And I knew that particular scene, that scene is not in the game per se. There are different variations of that scene in the game. Okay. And I think that scene is all about not really scaring us, but letting you know that it's not just, again, Ellie has a streak. I'll just say that. Like, her and Joel are a great pairing, because obviously, you know, Joel's protector, and you know, we can obviously tell he's going to develop this deep connection and love for her. But they, in certain ways, they're not good for each other, because they kind of enable each other's worst impulses. Mm-hmm. And I think that was like the first, or one of the first kind of instances of us seeing like this streak within Ellie that we're going to see a lot of going forward.
Knowing at the end, when she's kind of rifling through the house before they leave, she stumbles across the desk that Frank had pulled a gun from when they were being raided. She too finds a gun. I don't know if it's the same one or not, but she finds a gun and she stashes it away before Joel can see her. I'm curious as to how that's going to play out in future episodes when she decides that she's going to use it. Like, if that's how that's going to go over, you know, because he's just very adamant. He doesn't want her to have a gun.
My guess is that she saves Joel by using this gun. And that's how Joel discovers she has this gun.
Okay,
Just a guess.
I can get behind that.
Yeah.
It's a plausible guess, one could say.
Sounds
Tristan's
good.
like tight-lipped, not going to say anything.
Yeah. So looking ahead to the next episode, looks like episode 4 is going to be pretty action-packed from what we saw in the little teaser. Do y'all have any thoughts about what you hope happens next? I'll go to Tristan first.
Yeah, I'm gonna stay out of these going forward. Like, I think I know exactly, but like again, the show has been deviating, and the show is going to deviate.
Yeah.
So I don't expect it to be 1-to-1, but I think I have a great idea about the general range. So I'm gonna kind of keep that tight-lipped on my end going forward.
Frank, what are you looking forward to in the next episode, or what do you think should happen? Or because they're heading to Wyoming, apparently they're on their way to Wyoming,
which is like, I like how that low key said Wyoming like it's like next door. That's a fucking god, bro. Like, aren't they like in like Rosside, Massachusetts?
Yeah, they're
3
10
miles
outside of Boston.
10
Yeah.
miles.
Damn, like,
Miles. Yeah.
fam, with like no roads or like everything like destroyed. Like, I'm sure there's gonna be trouble along the way, zombie communities, raiders. They might stumble upon on. So I'm guessing some trouble is going to come a brewing.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, and we see a glimpse of she's one of my favorite actresses, Melanie Linsky. I'm curious as to her role in this whole series and if she's going to be for them or against them, that kind of thing. It looks like the truck gets a beating, for sure. I mean, talk about being able to move more quickly with the truck to get to Wyoming, but it looks like it gets a beating. It takes a beating at some point. So I'm looking forward to the episode for sure. I still don't like these clickers. I still don't like these broccoli face motherfuckers. I don't. I know we're gonna see
news
them.
for you. There's worse.
I know.
There's worse than the clickers by far.
Okay.
By far, I tell you, there's worse than the clickers.
Yeah, we were talking about this last week. Like, is there like a Incredible Hulk version of the clickers? It's like down the road.
There's a form of zombie called bloaters. So each one of these,
I don't like the sound of that.
You won't like the sound. I'm so sorry. You and Marcella may jump off after this one. But there are different variations of the zombie. You have the runners who are like your more recent infected.
Yeah.
You have your clickers who, they've probably been that way for about 7 to 10 years or something. And you have your bloaters.
See, Justin, I told you there's different phases of
that's what I figured.
This mutation.
Yeah, and then the bloaters are probably they're close to like your 20-year infected.
Okay.
Yeah, like they've been there since the beginning.
Gross.
Ooh, do they get like stronger over time, Tristan? Like these variations of zombies, longer they live.
Yeah.
Like, okay.
Yeah, because again, it's the fungi. It's beginning.
They're connected, right? They're all connected.
It's not just that. They're connected, absolutely. Right. But the fungi eats away at the brain, and you see, like the runners, their brains are pretty much gone outside, and that fungus spreads throughout the entirety of their body. And I have goosebumps right now.
Oh. Wait, so I just had like an epiphany or whatever. Like, so what you just said. So you're saying that the brains are coming out on the face, like so when you have a full blown clicker, that's their brains that are covering their eyes.
Yes.
Oh
wow! I did not know that.
I did not know that. Now that changes. I thought it was like some kind of growth. I mean,
I'm uncomfortable.
There's a mission there, or there's a section in the second game with the bloater. It took me probably about 6 days to beat. It's like it's in that one setting just to beat that one bloater. It took me about 6 days, and I had to Google the shit, and it still took me 6 days. That shit still gives me nightmares. Nothing has made me more anxious playing a video game in my entire life.
I'm looking at a still of one of the clickers from the previous episode.
Yeah.
And now I can't unsee it with the whole brain.
The brain, yeah. I did not know that.
There's something 10 times worse than that.
No, I'm sorry. It's been a fun run. I'm glad I ended it with Bill and Frank. It was a beautiful love story. Thank you so much.
Hop it on. Yeah.
Are they more athletic too as they get older? Because like this in the first episode, episode 2, no.
Nana got a 4.4.
Okay, so Nana was athletic as fuck, running around the house and shit. But the one episode 2 where Tess and Joel stumble upon, he wasn't as fast enough and as athletic as Nana was. So are there different levels of speeds and athleticism? Like these motherfuckers, because some seem more athletic and fast than others.
That's not explained in the game, or the showrunners haven't mentioned that, but I would imagine that maybe the longer you are infected, the less athletic you could possibly. I don't know. I have nothing for you on that, but
man, put them on a team, bro. Some sort of contract, 5-year contract, bro. You'll get more stronger and more athletic as you get older, bro. That's like Pat Mahomes on steroids, dog.
There's no league though, and that's
the problem. It's none but free agents at this point. That's right. That's true.
Weekend warriors, just getting after it. So the last thing I want to mention, and Tristan, I think you can talk about this. So the truck is very iconic, as are the clothing that Joel and Ellie receive after they get their hot shower at Bill's house. So is that kind of like their uniform? Like is that the moment like where the superhero gets his suit? Is that kind of what we saw? It was just like very understated or whatever.
Pretty much, especially the shirt Ellie has on at the end. That's the shirt she has on for a large majority of the game.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Very cool. And the truck the same way. The truck is kind of a key part.
Same thing with the truck. Yeah. Even though you don't really spend a lot of time in the truck in the game. I'm just like that's another deviation. Like that you don't really get to the truck until later in the game. But yeah. Okay.
Good to know. Okay, well, episode 3, I think we all agree was a phenomenal episode. Looking forward to more. So now you know what we think about it. Brittany, how can people tell us what we want to know what you think about it? Tell us on social media. How can people find us on social media?
Yep. Well, first and foremost, thank you to everyone who joined us for the live chat today. M Moves here in the chat, Marcy and Trisha and Nick all the way from the UK. Appreciate y'all being here. Tell us your thoughts about this episode in the comments section if you're watching the replay, but also follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Search @Watchers Basement. You can use that same handle, but turn it into a hashtag to help us grow our audience. We are on the road to 300 YouTube subscribers, and as of time of recording, we're at 212. So that is awesome. Let's keep it going. Don't forget to like this video as well. And lastly, check out our audio podcasts available on Apple, Google, and Spotify. Thanks to Anchor.fm. Give us a 5-star rating. And back to you, Justin.
Thank you, Brittany. So for Brittany, for Frank, for Tristan, I'm Justin saying we'll see you next week. We talk about episode 4 of The Last of Us. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. Bye-bye.